Hi everyone, this is Carly from Craig Systems. Welcome back and thank you for joining us for our last Security Basics Lunch and Learn. At Craig Systems, we provide tailored voice, data, and security solutions to meet your business needs today and well into the future. We've seen firsthand how cyber attacks can disrupt business operations. So we've put together this short, ongoing webinar series to educate our clients because the more you know about digital security, the better you can protect your company, your customers, and your data. We have introduced a new topic each week and dove into the basics. We're joined by Shanna Utgard, Success Manager at Defendify, our strategic cybersecurity partner. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Shanna.
Thank you, Carly. And as everybody can tell, I'm sounding a little hoarse today, probably because I've been doing a ton of webinars. This one is obviously my favorite. So as Carly mentioned, I am Shanna Utgard. I am the Success Manager here at Defendify. And sadly, this is our last Cybersecurity Basics Lunch and Learn. I'm a little bummed about this. It's kind of like when you finish your show that you've been binging on Netflix and you feel a little sadness about it. So today we are going to talk about some of the less sexy stuff about cybersecurity. And again, just a quick reminder here, we are Craig Systems' strategic cybersecurity partner. We have a all-in-one cybersecurity platform that is specifically designed for small business needs. So we work with a lot of different small organizations across the United States and Canada. We're even crossing the pond overseas. We see a lot of different things that cybersecurity or that smaller businesses are facing when it comes to cybersecurity. One of the biggest things that we're seeing increase over the last few years, really more so the last, I don't know, say this year and a little bit before, is the cybersecurity questionnaires or assessments that companies are receiving. So it's going to be the first thing I want to talk about today. What these large enterprise organizations are starting to realize is, if we look at the Target breach, for example, most people remember the Target breach. A lot of people even stopped shopping at Target. One of the things that the public doesn't generally realize is that that breach occurred as a result of an HVAC contractor. So large enterprise organizations are starting to wisen up to the fact that their vendors and their third parties that they're working with present a big risk to them as an organization. Everybody remembers Target. They don't know anything about that small HVAC company. So there are these groups out there that are starting to put out third-party risk assessments, vendor questionnaires. So these smaller companies are receiving questionnaires that are long. They have hundreds of questions. It's all IT gibberish and geek speak, and they just don't know how to navigate these. And the risk there is that they could potentially lose a contract with this large enterprise company. For example, I work with a marketing company down that is, they're 10 people in the entire organization. They have large enterprise clients. They got a cybersecurity questionnaire and a request for 9 hours worth of meetings to talk about their cybersecurity posture. My contact was like, I don't know what we're going to do for 9 hours. We don't have anything in place. We were in the process of getting them set up with Defendify. But imagine you open up your inbox and your best client sends you a survey that looks something like this. And it's just page after page after page of, what is multi-tenant data centers anyway? Just page after page after page after page of questions. How would you handle that? Would you even know how to begin to answer? This is a really important part of having a well-rounded cybersecurity program. You want to be proactive. If you work with larger organizations, they're hiring these governance, risk, and compliance groups to come in and prepare these surveys for their third parties and their vendors that they're working with. So if you know that you have clients that are large companies with big legal teams and all of that, you will want to get as many of these cybersecurity pieces in place before you receive these risk assessments. Because I can tell you from personal experience, helping companies scramble to put these in place, in the days leading up to one of these assessments is a very trying time. It takes a lot of time and resources, and it's just very stressful. So, put these things in place ahead of time. Another important topic that we get asked about all the time is cybersecurity insurance. Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer out here because I absolutely am not an insurance professional. And even if I was, there are so many different companies and brokers, and there you really have to go down the rabbit hole with cybersecurity insurance and find a good broker that's going to help you navigate your cybersecurity insurance. If you haven't looked at it recently, really make sure that you're going in and looking at the coverages and exclusions and all the fine print of that cybersecurity policy, especially if you haven't bought it recently. If this is a policy that you've had for a little while, you're going to want to go in and look at what it's actually covering. Most companies that we talk to, they go back and they look at their cybersecurity insurance and they realize that there are things that they want to change about the policy. A couple things to consider and look at here is, your scope of coverage and exactly what is or isn't covered in your policy. That includes, your policy limits and your sublimits. Look at things like, your actual damages. So, we've seen it situations like, the bottom bullet point here, business interruption. Some claims are limited to only paying out losses that are incurred during an actual network interruption and not for the entire period that the business has been disrupted. So, if we think back to our episode about ransomware, your business could be down for, a week or more. If that cyber attack occurs over a weekend, but your business is down for a week or more, your claim might only cover the weekend of the attack and not, the full week of all of those losses we talked about in that lunch and learn with, the people costs and not being able to bring in any revenue and new technology that you have to put into place. Bricking is another thing that you want to see if your policy coverage is. So if you, have some malware and it ends up in a piece of technology that is now useless, you've got a server that you can't use anymore. You want to make sure that things like that are covered. There's different types of coverage for first party and third party. So those are some other things to ask your broker about, as well as privacy liability. Depending on the type of information that you are storing that you could potentially have a breach, you want to make sure that privacy liability is one of the coverages that's in there. And really go through your exclusions with your broker with a fine-tooth comb. Ask a lot of questions. And make sure that these common incidents are covered. Just in my experience, some of the situations that I've seen cause cybersecurity claim denials, there's a particular clause. It's called something different among different insurance companies, is a failure to maintain or failure to follow. If you remember when you got your cybersecurity insurance coverage, chances are they probably gave you a questionnaire. It may have even looked something like the one I just flipped through, asking you a lot of questions filled with a lot of technical details. You may have just checked boxes and said, I don't really know, I guess, maybe. We've seen these situations where when a claim is being filed, the first thing, insurance companies, we know what they do. They go in and they take that initial questionnaire and they're comparing, the answers that you gave to details that they're uncovering in their forensic investigation, just to make sure that, those things were actually in place. So the failure to follow is, failure to continuously keep or maintain those procedures or patches or technology solutions, different types of risk controls that were outlined in that initial application or questionnaire. So you have to make sure, we mention almost every time, that cybersecurity is an ongoing posture that you have to take. It's not just a one and done project. So make sure that you're keeping all of those boxes that you checked off up to date. You'll want to look at social engineering schemes and what type of coverage is included in your policy. So some policies contain some exit points, so the insurers can attempt to deny coverage over that. So We've seen situations where funds were being transferred by somebody who had the authority and the ability to transfer those. A lot of business email compromise and scams. Like that time, I wired $2.1 million for a cyber attacker. So if they were voluntarily transferred and somebody went in and did that, we've seen denials as a result of that. We've seen phishing scams, like the voice telephone phishing scams, and claims about that denied because it wasn't a result of being directly from the use of a computer. Losses that were not directly from the insured. So, somebody, one of their clients' funds that were is sent off instead. So it wasn't, the insured didn't really have a claim there. So that's another situation for social engineering. Cyber extortion and ransomware. Really ask your broker to cover or to go through that extortion clause if there is one in your policy. Also, we've seen denials of payments of fines or fees. So for example, if you are under PCI compliance and you had, customers' credit card information that was exposed or lost, if there are fines from PCI, that may or may not be covered in your policy. And then other situations, insider threat, we mentioned that in one of our episodes. Criminal, fraudulent, dishonest activity. So we'll talk today especially about having clearly defined policies in place, but also take a look at your cyber coverages, because you could have an employee that does something maliciously. So a couple other technology solutions that we haven't really talked about in depth so far. Website and application scanning and testing. So for smaller organizations, we typically see that they didn't create their own public-facing marketing website. When somebody goes and Googles your business, the page that pops up, you probably had a web designer put it up at some point in the beginning of your business. Maybe you've redone it over the last few years, but chances are you don't do that management of the website yourself. You may have even had somebody create the website for you and stick it up there, but never really looked at it again. It's very common in smaller businesses. Nobody's managing that website for you. There's a lot of your reputation that's tied to your website. So we really recommend ongoing scanning and testing of that website. We worked with a law office here in Maine, and their About Us page was redirecting to a casino gambling website, and it was very difficult for them to get any referrals because their page was taking people to gambling. I also worked with a organization it's a funeral home in New Jersey, and their website was delivering drive-by malware to everybody that was coming and visiting their loved ones' obituaries. It was just an absolute nightmare. They had to take down the website, which made people even more upset in a time where they were already emotionally taxed. So it was a really big mess for that poor business owner. So doing some ongoing scanning and testing on your website, looking for things like malware and spam injections, redirects, looking for blacklisting by any of the major search engines. So, if people are trying to find your business or find a, tax preparer in Northern New York, you'll want to make sure that you're not blacklisted by any of the major search engines and people are able to find you. TLS is another thing. When people are navigating to your website, are they getting a message saying that it's not secure, or are they getting that nice little lock screen? We also check for just some general security hardening improvements. So ongoing scanning. If you have a web application as part of your business, you're going to want to do scanning on that as well. There are scanning tools that can actually crawl that web app and look for any vulnerabilities. You can also do some penetration testing on that application as well. If you've ever had a price quote for any of that scanning or testing and you had a mild heart attack about it, please reach out to my friends at Craig Systems. Another really important part of a well-rounded cybersecurity program that we haven't really been diving into over this series is policy development. We mentioned it quite a bit when we were talking about compliance requirements. Nowadays, having a comprehensive written technology and data use policy or an acceptable use policy is extremely important. How much technology is ingrained in everything that we do in a business sense nowadays is not always aligned with the policies that you might have in your handbook. So, a lot of companies have maybe like 1 or 2 paragraphs in their employee handbook about how to use technology. It's just not enough nowadays from a legal standpoint. So you want to make sure that you're developing an acceptable use policy for technology or a tech and data use policy. Things that you want to consider in that are, no privacy expectations, password health and confidentiality, not sharing passwords among people. A lot of companies are considering putting social media clauses in their technology and data use policy because, you are still a representative of the company even when you're outside of work, and people, can see where you work and they know where you work. And so anything company related, it's something to consider putting in your tech and data use policy. And then just general acceptable uses, the do's and don'ts. Make sure, especially now that we are in a remote working situation, most of us, that kind of changes things a little bit as far as how you're using technology. So you may even want to consider having a separate, remote work policy, having acceptable uses, considering bring your own device policy. So if you didn't give employees, their own company issued computers and they're using their personal devices at home, really make sure that you have a clearly defined bring your own device policy in your tech and data use policy. Some other things to consider are having a clean desk policy, especially important if you're dealing with a lot of sensitive information and people are working from home. You don't want anybody to be able to shoulder surf or see any confidential or sensitive information at the end of the workday. Make sure that everything is put away and locked up just like you would at the office. So having that clean desk policy, both in the office and working remotely, is very important. And then there are other policies depending on how in-depth you need to go. There is a comprehensive written information security policy. I've been working with a large group of tax preparers recently because every time they're filing tax returns, they're checking a little box saying that they have a written information security policy in place. So that is very comprehensive. It talks about everything that you have going on from a technology and data security standpoint. So it's a much longer and more detailed policy. You should also have a incident response plan. The worst time to figure out how you should be responding to an incident is while you're in the middle of it. I know that firsthand from wiring a bunch of money. So you want to make sure that you're running those fire drills, you're doing all the planning and the preparation ahead of time so that if you find yourself in one of those incidents, you have very clearly defined step-by-step process that you're going to follow. Some things that your incident response plan should include are who the security team contacts are, outlining roles and responsibilities. So, if everything's blowing up, who is responsible for what? Very clearly defined duties. You also want to have some guidance for employees on how to identify and detect that an incident is going on. So, employees, if they're saying like, gee, I think something funky is going on with my email, I don't really know what's happening. It's always better to report that type of incident and to have somebody investigate it. Any type of warning or like a slowdown of a system or all of those signs that something might be going on, you want to have clearly outlined so that employees can go, something doesn't feel right, and then be able to report it so that it can begin to be investigated. Also, step-by-step responses. One of the most important parts of an incident response plan is containing that security incident as quickly as possible. Obviously we can make a million analogies of other areas of our life where, if you don't get on top of something right now, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Definitely true with cyber incidents, whether it's a ransomware attack that is spreading from computer to computer and all the way across your entire network, or a suspected data breach. The longer that attacker is inside your network, the more information they could collect and the bigger mess you're going to have on your hands. So also things like lost or stolen devices. We're working remotely, a lot of us, so it is even more easier to lose a company issued device or have it stolen, or any number of incidents. So you want to have a step-by-step process on exactly how to deal with that. And then having a lot of guidance about post-incident activity, making sure that employees know how to take good notes as everything's happening. Forensic investigations are never fun. I hope you don't ever have to be a part of one. But if your employees are able to collect a lot of information while they're going through that, when you're going back and reviewing how that security incident occurred, you can conduct a lessons learned meeting and be able to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So very important to have an incident response plan in place. We talked about lost or stolen devices. Another really great technology solution here is mobile device protection. So not a lot of companies have mobile and device protection in place. If one of your employees has a company issued cell phone and they leave it in the grocery store, there's a possibility that there is a lot of company sensitive information on there. With a mobile device and management solution, you have the ability to track that device, see the location of it. You can use some remote wiping capabilities. So if that device is lost and gone, you can wipe any of the company sensitive data off of it. There's a lot of other functionality for mobile and device protection. You can see, some of the activity. You can lock down applications or websites that are being viewed on that. So especially good if it's a company issued device. If you allow employees to bring your own device and use their own cell phones to access company information, it's a little bit more of a cost to provide them with mobile device management technology, but it's really important if it's a bring your own device situation. You want to also have a clearly defined bring your own device policy and set the expectations around using their own personal devices. You also want to make sure that your mobile device management solution is compatible with all different types of devices, because I may have an iPhone, but Carly may have a Samsung. So make sure that it is compatible with all the different types of phones that are out there. So highly recommend this technology piece, especially in this pandemic, and people are using a lot of their own technology. Another component that we should talk about with a well-rounded cybersecurity program is data loss protection. So we went in depth about ransomware in one of our episodes. I love to talk about backups because I think they are extremely important. Some of the things to consider are you regularly backing up your information? Not only that, but are you backing it up and are you testing your backups? You want to have multiple copies of that data stored in multiple locations, in multiple formats. So, there are ransomware strains that are so sophisticated now that they are actually able to lock up some of the backup solutions. So, you want to have an on-site, you want to have an off-site, a lot of different formats for those backups. And test them regularly. Test and make sure that you are able to restore from those backups. Another thing to consider is how often you are doing your backups. So, for example, if you think about over the course of a day, I know a lot of companies back up their data once per day. If you had a ransomware infection at 3 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, and your last backup was midnight tonight, think about how much information you have collected, stored, changed from midnight to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and define if that is acceptable to be able to lose. If it is, maybe it's only a couple of, sales calls that somebody can quickly and easily recover and jot down. But if you're collecting a lot of information over that time, whether it's information about patients or, information that you cannot afford to lose, an entire day's worth of data, make sure that your backups are occurring more frequently than that. Because in the event that you get hit with ransomware and your IT provider has to wipe all of those devices and restore them from the backups, you're going to lose that data. So you want to make sure that you are protecting that. You also want to make sure that you are encrypting data. So make sure that nobody's eyes other than the intended recipient are able to see that. Especially true if you are a healthcare organization. You have probably heard this a gazillion times with HIPAA. And then also having clear data policy rules in that technology and data use policy. And then another last topic that I want to talk about really quickly here is access control. So this is a very important part of a well-rounded cybersecurity program. There are a lot of different types of access control. So you have network access. So on the digital side of things, who is able to access what information on your servers, or if they do not need it for their job, we have the need to know and least privilege principles. The person should only have access to what they need to accomplish their job duties or their tasks, and that's it, and only for the time in which you need access. So if they don't need to have access to certain files or folders on your network, they don't need to have access unless it's required for their job. Another thing is physical access. So who you're allowing into your building. So do you have locks in place, access control cards? How are people getting into your business? Is there somebody that is greeting them if they come through the door? Do you have visitor sign-ins? Do you keep logs of who is in your building at what time? So you want to control that physical access. If you have, access readers or door badge cards, those types of things, are you training your employees not to let anybody come in behind them, even with a really great backstory about how they're in a rush or they need this or that? Our employees holding the door for other people to tailgate in behind them. So things like that should be included in your cybersecurity training. And new hire onboarding process. So make sure that people are controlling who has physical access to your network and your systems. You don't want them coming in and plugging a USB key into your computers, which maybe you want to consider disabling that anyway. And then just one last final reminder, and I have to say I am so impressed with how many people are jumping on this Cybersecurity Essentials package. It's just been absolutely fantastic knowing how many of the businesses up there in New York are protecting themselves, taking advantage of these 3 free tools. Reminder there that we have the Cybersecurity Health Checkup, which is our self-assessment tool. It's going to cover some of these things like access control, policies and procedures. Do you have those in place? The External Network Vulnerability Scanner, so making sure that you're conducting those ongoing scans. You don't have any patches or anything that needs to be applied or exposed ports, so that if, God forbid, you ever find yourself in that forensic investigation standpoint, the cybersecurity insurance company can't come back and say that you had any type of failure to maintain or failure to follow. And then the threat alert system, so staying up to date on the current threats, the scams, the incidents that could be occurring out in the general cybersecurity landscape. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So making sure that you and your employees are staying up to date on how you could be a target. So again, this is a totally free package, no strings attached. We just want you to have some basic tools to help you out so that you've got a good basis and foundation for your cybersecurity program. It doesn't expire, and we're not going to turn around 6 months from now and ask you for a credit card. So I hear from a lot of people, what's the catch? So if you have any questions or concerns about that, please reach out to us. And for all of you who have signed up, I hope that you're enjoying your tools. If you haven't signed up yet, why not? And then last but not least, here are my friend's contact details. I want to thank everybody for attending. Those of you who have been here with us every single week, I hope that you have enjoyed our Cybersecurity Lunch and Learn series. Maybe you have taken some tips and tricks that have helped you in your business or helped you in your personal life. Please share them with your friends and your family. If you know other business owners, if you're a member of a BNI group or anything like that, we have this entire webinar series, except for last week, that will be up. And it's on YouTube, on Craig Systems YouTube channel. So we send out the link to the recording. Feel free to distribute that to other people that you think could learn some great lessons from this. And October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and also my favorite month and my birthday. So and enjoy, circulate that, share it with everybody. Let's help protect each other. And thank you for spending a half hour with us every week. We really appreciate it. And with that, Carly or Mike, you have anything you want to add?
Shanna, thank you. Just been another great presentation, as always. And like Shanna said, if anybody would like to contact us, please feel free to call us at 315-788-0000 or email sales@craigsystems.com. Thank you.
And that's a wrap, folks.